Well, we were already very hopeful because of two reasons principally. First was that, as you correctly said, these were the highest level talks between Iran and the United States in 47 years in which the Islamic Republic has been in place. There've been discussions with secretaries of state and the foreign minister, but this was one step higher. So we were positive that the presence of JD Vance and also a 70-member strong delegation from Iran demonstrated that Iran was serious, and it wasn't just an activity that they were engaging in, that they were serious in getting to a deal. Um, that's the first aspect that they showed seriousness. The second was that in terms of the war, both sides had reached a condition in which further armed conflict would give them diminishing returns. So each, for the Americans, another day of bombing in Iran would not really change anything, the facts on the ground. Similarly, attacks by Iran, either on the United States or any of its Arab neighbors, had refused now to give any more further dividends. So I think both sides were in a position to speak and understand each other. There was also a third minor aspect, which I felt could lead to a positive outcome, is that regarding Iran's nuclear issue, which J.D. Vance, in my view, uh, didn't say the right thing. The nuclear issue has been resolved twice in recent decades. In 2015, when the JCPOA was being negotiated in Geneva with Iran and five major powers, including the United States, the nuclear issue was thoroughly, I think, worked out in minute detail. And similarly, in just earlier this year, in February in Oman, again the nuclear issue had been worked out. So my view, personal view, was that since the nuclear issue there's enough precedence there that no further or longer discussion is needed. So the focus could be on the economic aspect of the war, which is the closure of Strait of Hormuz, and versus the lifting of sanctions on Iran. But apparently, I think both sides uh, came out of the negotiations in a positive mindset, which gives us hope. I think it is notable that both by Vice President J.D. Vance and the Iranian speaker Kalibaf, as well as the Iranian foreign minister, didn't indulge in name calling or blame game or saying, that this side didn't work. So they just kept it on an even keel, which of course the whole thing was disrupted by President Trump's tweet from Florida. What we see here is that as we are speaking, the deadline for the US blockade has already passed, but there's no immediate confirmation as of now that this has begun. And it seems to me that it's more a contest of who can take more pain. But the US indulging precisely in a maneuver which it was trying to stop. The blockage of Hormuz is the point. So if the US begins to block it, then it complicates matters and makes it more international that China, which gets 45% of its oil from Arab countries, so many other countries, including Pakistan, get their energy supplies from there. So this complicates the matter if US then becomes the blocking party. Because unlike Iran, the US has worldwide interests, worldwide economic interests, worldwide security interests. So this maneuver, which President Trump has threatened, as of today, I don't think it's going to be really implemented in a very large scale manner. Otherwise, the real threat is not from any country. The real threat is that the energy shortages, which so far have only led to price increases, will begin to lead actual supply shortages across the world. And that is very likely to trigger what happened 100 years ago in 1929, what was deemed the Great Depression, and which made tens of millions of Americans and Europeans unemployed, brought so much economic misery. And I do not think that the world is ready or should not be ready for any country to be able to inflict that kind of misery for so little to be gained from it. Precisely. I think the economic aspect. That's why I personally can surmise. I can predict that the war part of actual armed conflict is now going to be overtaken very soon by the economic emergency of dealing with this issue. Um, because the Arab countries have every interest in opening the whole of the Gulf, not just the Strait of Hormuz, because of course every traffic passes through ultimately through the strait, and so their interests are vital. And it's not. I mean, even countries which we don't hear about much, which are Iraq and Kuwait, they are also entirely dependent upon their energy supplies going out. And similarly, I've probably said on many channels, it's not just oil and gas that are important. The Arab countries now export some very crucial non-energy inputs across the world: sulfur, helium, polypropylene, polyethylene. They export a large measure of the world's urea, and already in Europe, urea prices are rising, which is a crucial fertilizer. So the economic aspect, I think, in the coming days, we have until April 21st for the deadline of the current ceasefire. And that's why I agree with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who said earlier today that it is a very every likelihood that the ceasefire will be extended because these economic issues will need sorting out in very short order. We don't know what forum is going to be there to sort this out, but I think already discussions must have begun. Because another, I think, notable aspect is that President Trump said yesterday that other countries are going to support him in the Hormuz blockade. So far, none has stepped up. Well, it's not a question of weight, it's the question of trust, which, because of the very, I think, dynamic diplomacy by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, as well as Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, that this dynamic diplomacy and principled diplomacy, I think it's very important to note here also, has led to Pakistan gaining the trust not only of the United States, but more crucially of Iran. I think Pakistan is one of the few countries that Iran is willing to travel to. I think the traveling of the Iranian delegation tells you a great deal about how much the depth of trust that has been achieved. So Pakistan's role is not to advocate a certain course of action. Our course is to, and I think already I believe Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and his team, Field Marshal Asim Munir, they're already on it, is to impress upon both sides that not to overplay their cards. And so not Pakistan is not proposing a solution, but we are saying that whatever leverage you think you have, do not overplay it, because overplaying it will lead to, or some kind of ego that we have seen, particularly when it comes to President Trump, that, look, I've been able to manage this. This kind of ego threatens to plunge the world first into a Great Depression, and the even more worse outcome, a third world war, if worldwide energy supplies continue to be disrupted and different countries begin to maneuver themselves or position themselves in order to better gain access to energy supplies. It's a prospect, both the Great Depression and the Third World War, which are now being actually mooted by many experts, is something that is too awful to contemplate. So Pakistan's role, I repeat, is not to advocate a particular solution, but to impress upon both parties to be realistic in their calculations and how they come to the negotiating table, and also to realize, as you have correctly pointed out, that there are other stakeholders sitting on the side. So when the United States and Iran are negotiating, the Arab countries are a very, deep into the process. Similarly, I mean, the shadow of Israel uh, darkens these negotiations over these. So, and of course, Pakistan security interest, which is that this US Israel war with Iran should never expand into being an Arab Iran war. That's something that we are trying to prevent and have successfully prevented in 6 weeks of conflict. So these things are all in the mind. But as I said, Pakistan's role is of an honest broker, of a trusted intermediary between these two antagonists, which have very little trust between them. But until the final talk by J.D. Vance, the sense that we got and I got from some of the participants is that the negotiations actually had been improving in their as they went on. The atmosphere was improving between the two sides, and they were less distrustful and willing to speak more openly. But ultimately, I think whatever reason, my guess was that the breakage in negotiation came from Israel's attack on Lebanon and the play of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz versus Iran's demand that sanctions be lifted from it. Yes, I think it's very clear that Vice President J.D. Vance, uh, because of his particular position, two aspects of it. First of all, that the vice president in the American system is merely the representative of the president. He doesn't have direct authority over any other department. He just represents the president. So he had to consult frequently, and there there's no better word for it. The ego of President Trump probably got in the way to realize that any semblance of an early concession might be construed as weakness. Um, and also, I think we should never discount the fact that the back of the vice president's mind is his coming bid for the Republican nomination for presidency in 2028 in the United States. So that is also an issue that he wanted to position himself to say, look, I give them a, take it or leave it proposition, and I'm strong, and, I dealt with Iran. Uh, when in fact, I think, as I said, because of the economic situation, uh, minds will focus beyond the ego of the current incumbent president in the United States, as well as the fact that the economic situation, if it worsens further, is going to cause worldwide panic and pressure on the US and Iran to conclude a deal. Yeah, if there is a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, that might remove one of the major impediments towards a US Iran deal. Iran, of course, also has interest in maintaining its adherence in Lebanon. Israel again wants to uh, essentially eliminate the Iran adherents in Lebanon. Israelis call it mowing the grass. They just want to mow the grass. But it's a question of how much pressure the United States is willing to put on Israel in talks that begin in Washington, I think tomorrow, Tuesday, that they are able to conclude that deal. And if the deal is concluded and Israel withdraws to its borders, I think the US Iran deal will come much closer. I do not think so. I think there was tremendous flexibility shown by Iran in the Oman talks, which we were told were very near to fruition. I think the Omani foreign minister is on record. Uh, and in fact, he tried to prevent the war. He, flew to Washington from Oman in order to impress upon the Americans that the deal was very near conclusion, and there should not be armed hostility. But of course, as we now know, Prime Minister Netanyahu had convinced President Trump to go to war on very flimsy premises. And this disastrous miscalculation that the war will conclude in 48 hours, because once the supreme leader was eliminated, Iran will rise up and there will be a more America friendly government. I mean, that hasn't happened at all. I mean, we haven't seen even movements towards that event. So therefore, I think there's question of less trust now between the United States and Israel. Iran uh, unexpectedly has, through the Strait of Hormuz, found a new, for lack of a better word, trump card in its negotiations. That its ability, which it had never exercised in 47 years, I think we should remind ourselves again and again that until 27th of February, Strait of Hormuz was open to all international traffic, which is not no longer true. So Iran has, by its sheer survival and resistance, uh, developed and demonstrated two capabilities. First, to block Strait of Hormuz without actually having a navy in the waters. And second was that without having nuclear weapons, it demonstrated that its missiles were enough to practically paralyze the economy of the Arab nations that are on the other side of the Gulf. So Iran, yes, is stronger than stronger today than it when it began the war. But yes, I think it is uh, the flexibility, uh, as I sense it, is probably more on the American side than the Iranian side. And that is why, because the Americans need to get rid of the war, they need to finish it because their economy and the world economy is hurting. Iran doesn't have that consideration. Iran is not too bothered about the world economy. In fact, the high oil prices are benefiting its economy. But since it doesn't have the international angle when it makes its strategic calculation, I think Iran ultimately, I think, wants to use this opportunity to what it has been trying for now 11 years since JCPOA in 2015, is to get back into the world economy, to be able to sell its oil and deal in hard currency, and trying to become a normal citizen of the world. But of course, the US and I think many other Arab countries would seek some assurances from Iran that it will no longer pursue its hardline policies. And similarly, Iran will be seeking some assurance from the United States that United States and Iran will not attack it. So it's a complex and difficult negotiation, weighted down by a half a century of recrimination and mistrust. And I think that is all the more reason that Pakistan's role and the role played by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir has been so valuable and has proved to be probably the only diplomatic maneuver that was available. Otherwise, as you have seen, the world seemed helpless in stopping this conflict, and Pakistan stepped in, and Pakistan was able to bring two sides to the table, which is always a positive aspect. I expect, I have no official confirmation, of course, but I expect that efforts are going on by Pakistan, by Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the four countries that got together, Egypt, in order to get not only to get the ceasefire extended, but to get two sides on the table. And again, no country now has better insight on what the two sides are thinking than Pakistan, which was sitting on the table when these talks were taking place. So Pakistan now better understands where the Iranian and the U.S. positions are coming from, and I expect both Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, as well as Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, are still working on it because peace in the Middle East, the resumption of normal international trade from the Arabian Gulf is not only a world interest, it is the Pakistan's interest, it is the interest of the Pakistani people. It's always, I think, good to remind ourselves that Pakistan is under a mutual defense agreement, not an attack agreement. So it's a question of defense of Saudi Arabia, and we will defend the Saudi territory as we have committed, just as we expect the Saudi armed forces to defend us if there is an attack on Pakistan. So the defense part is there, and we will try our best. I think more than the worst case scenario, it's a question of, as experts have said so long ago, the issue is not to go into a war in the first place, and that is what Pakistan has been trying. And I would urge your viewers to note that Pakistan has been singularly successful through its diplomacy in making sure that in the more than now 40 days of war, that this war did not, despite many temptations on each side, did not turn into an Iran Arab war. So this is a great achievement of Pakistan's diplomacy.